Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with co-host David Finkelstein. Bringing him in here. Hi, David. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Catching up with lots of hurricane issues, and like I mentioned in the green room, I may have to ditch out early as I get a new vehicle delivered. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and I get to be here for the whole podcast. But if it does, we have a co-host that is going to join us, the guest co-host.
Let's bring him in here too. So we have a special guest co-host, Adam Fitzgerald. Adam is BDEX's Enterprise Sales Director. So thanks for being here with us, Adam.
My pleasure. I've been an avid listener since we started, and so now it's great to be on the other side of the screen, so to speak.
Awesome. Well, great to have you here. And today's guest is someone who's been here with us before. We're always excited to have her back. Fariba Zamaniyan is VP of Data and Advertising at TiVo. Thanks for being here, Fariba.
Thank you. It's always great to be chit-chatting with you guys, especially this is a time of year as we're getting ready for year end and prepping for the next. So I think this is always a really great time to talk about something that is near and dear to me, but also incredibly important to our ecosystem and our respective businesses. So great to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we just get right into the topics?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, holiday advertising. This is coming right up. I know a lot of advertisers are thinking about and have been thinking about for a while now. Black Friday coming up, just next week, and then on through December and the new year. What tips would you guys have for programmatic media buyers or anyone who is looking to target their audience this season?
Well, I think this has been a really interesting year. I think all of us probably, those of us tuned in or, as consumers as well as part of the industries, that I can't remember a holiday advertising starting as early as it did. I mean, we had an Amazon Day that was back in, was it October? And, it went from where we looked forward to the day after Thanksgiving as being that kind of kickoff to the shopping season to each year, it kind of creeping earlier and earlier into the year, if you think going backwards in the calendar. So, and now in addition to that, you've got a very, crazy year. We just came out of the midterm elections. A lot of uncertainty as to, what was going to happen and the outcomes. And you've got an economy where consumers are really rethinking how they are going to spend their money as some are struggling as prices continue to go up. I mean, it's every day you hear about how the cost of a turkey is double digits higher than it was in the years past. And you have an ecosystem that we participate in that is realizing, some contraction, with the layoffs that we've seen and some that are being anticipated still to come. So it's a really, I'd say this is a convergence of all of these things. And, for us in the, in preparation, especially programmatically, you're beginning the preparation, months in advance and to be ready to execute and have all your ducks in a row. And then you can't really forecast in some cases some of the things that are happening to date that would come. So it really speaks to an increasing need to be nimble, but yet be prepared. Being prepared by having the assets that you can leverage for deterministic data to define the audiences. For example, if you're going to be airing in holiday programming, who watches holiday programming, and are you reaching them so that you can ensure that they'll receive your message on, CTV video, for example, CTV content and advertising accordingly. So I think this kind of really speaks to, having been prepared and being nimble as you go forward as the market continues to change is really what it's tasking the programmatic planners and buyers to be ready to, in some cases, respond to rather than anticipate.
Yeah. I agree. It's a good point. I think that one of the interesting things is we saw after COVID, we saw that companies were paying a lot more attention on their return on ad spend and where that money is being spent. And now the added pressure of impending recession and the prices increased. I never knew that you could spend $20 on a jar of almond butter, but if you look in the store today, it's $20 for one jar.
I know,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make any
Wild.
sense, literally, for a jar of almond butter. And so I think that financial pressure is gonna further make it even more important this holiday season for advertisers to, make sure that they're getting that return on ad spend. So data quality and targeting, making sure they're reaching the right people is becoming more and more important than ever before since I've been in this industry. I mean,
Well,
Absolutely.
I think it all circles back around to hyper relevancy, right? In a buying cycle that used to be much more proactive, to the point you were making earlier, Fariba. I think buyers are now having to be a lot more reactive and engaged with what's going to be most relevant to consumers and buyers today.
Exactly. Because I mean, it's I think as an industry, we're continuously being challenged. COVID was in itself a challenge, but media thrived, and now we're coming out of COVID, and media, or I should say, the advertising technology is actually now starting to feel a little bit of that pinch. But what is the continuous theme has always been this advancement towards continuing to improve upon the return on the ad spend, which is not a new concept, right? If you're coming out of traditional linear through to digital, the constraints, the pressure is there, but it's even more pronounced because digital comes with this, kind of notion that it's measurable. And as we're seeing, and I know we're going to get into some more of the topic with connected TV and all the talk around it and standardization of metrics, and without it we can't optimize on measurement, performance, so forth. But we're talking about digital targeting and being able to reach the right audience. I think we've done a really good job as an industry of learning how to do that well. But we need to continue to really elevate and raise the bar on the sources of the data. As David mentioned, quality data. And what does quality mean? And to most, that should be that it's reflective of truth, right? We use data as that means to reduce risk. So the greater the trust and value we have in the data that we're using to define these audiences and then target against them is really where I think we have some room for improvement. And certainly there's fraud that's still out there. We don't talk about it enough as an industry, and it certainly is prevalent with CTV. But it's I think kind of the next stage of evolution, particularly for programmatic.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When we started BDEX, all we talked about was data quality, and the conversation was often, we're not really worried about that. And literally, we had companies that literally said that. They're like, we're what we're using is working for us. And basically, everybody sort of just accepted that third-party data had some bad data in it. But as long as they were getting a result, they were happy with it. And then we saw that literally flip after, during COVID, because people just needed, there was so much pressure to spend their money more wisely at that point. Companies didn't know how they were going to get out of COVID and things like that. And, there was a lot of financial pressures that caused by that. And then we started getting a lot more sort of conversations where people are like, okay, well, yeah, data quality is interesting. Can that help me improve on these ad campaigns? And we were like, yeah, this is how it works. And we started, revealing, the data quality issues that existed in the industry as a whole and still exists in the industry as a whole. And we've begun to see more and more companies, more and more advertisers be more concerned with that. And it's good. Like I think
Right.
that's really good for the industry as a whole, to put that pressure on making sure that, people are addressing ad fraud and people are addressing data quality. Those two are very closely connected, because ad fraud creates invalid bad data. So it's good, and we're seeing more and more of that today. And I think that's good for the future of the industry. That just means we're going to get better and better. Everyone's going to get better and better at targeting the right people.
And it's so interesting because I've literally been on the road for the last 3 weeks. I've been at various events, Advertising Week, A&A Masters of Marketing, the Beat Retreat, BTV Retreat, which was in Santa Monica. And I think that there's definitely, consistent with what you just said, David, is that we know we're getting better, and we have a hypersensitivity now because we have some history behind us. When we got started, it was, like we said, the Wild West. It was all about scale. It was about size. It was about as many device identities that you could get your hands on and execute a campaign. And now the sophistication really goes back to the basics, is that it's about quality to drive results. It's not obviously for the targeting and being able to reach as many devices, scales obviously matters, but at the core is the source of the data. And that's where, for us, where it's relevant, the TiVo's viewership data is actual second by second capture from set-top box, representative of programming behavior in terms of viewership, that, can be leveraged in order to, for example, drive tune-in conversion for an upcoming show or a movie in a similar genre, or, the Super Bowl in terms of tentpole events. And I think that's where there's this heightened now recognition coming out of these industry discussions that it is about quality. It's about representation. And really that's where, Nielsen, who's historically been the pillar of standardization and metrics to facilitate the buying and measurement of outcomes, is really focused on a message that's about, it's about the quality of the data, meaning the capture of all of the relevant eyeballs in the room. So these are conversations. I only bring that into this because it's happening at these really high levels as well, that we were so disconnected in terms of what you get your hands on and execute against. And I feel like there's this convergence across the ecosystem, whether you're in the advertising tech, you're a DSP or DMP supporting those initiatives, an advertiser, an agency. They're all starting to kind of come to the table with a real recognition that, what, quality does matter, because at the end of the day, I need to impact the outcomes. And the only way I'm going to impact the outcomes is by precision in my targeting and audience development capabilities.
All great points. And wow, we could probably talk about holiday advertising, for the entire show. But you also, speaking of high level conversations, Fariba, you also taught us a new buzzword, interoperability. And I'm most excited to get into this topic here and have you teach us. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So I think what we just talked about really segues into what, been in the media and advertising industry for a really long time. And the one thing that I've learned is that we love catchphrases and the new word of the day that is really surfacing, which isn't really something new to us, but it now is being coined as a practice, is interoperability. And really this kind of speaks to that whole connectivity of quality data to helping to drive outcomes. But where we as an industry have been under great debate is, how can we segue from these best practices and standardization that we've had in traditional legacy linear into this connected TV realm, and to do so with a means that enables us to build a standardization or a framework that enables us to buy and measure with the same level of confidence that we had with the legacy linear. And the truth is, it's something we're working on as an industry. There's been an opportunity for a lot of innovative thinking, competition, which drives innovation. But really what interoperability has forced us to do is, since we don't have this, in CTV, you've got all of this disparate, all these different apps and publishers that are providing the capability to advertise directly to consumers. And it's very different than coming from legacy linear. So in order to, as we strive towards some type of standard so that an advertiser or buyer can buy seamlessly across linear into this new version of TV, which we really, all of it to a consumer is TV, is that we have to operate within a framework from which data can be leveraged in a means to create audiences and define them in a way that can flow easily across all of the different options within, let's say, the connected TV ecosystem. And so what the industry are really coming from the buy side, so advertisers, their agencies as their agents, is that in order for them to move more of the advertising spend from linear into connected TV, is that there has to be interoperability. It doesn't require that. And I think the conversation a year ago was about, well, the only way we can connect the dots is by having a universal ID. And that isn't necessarily what many of these agents of advertisers believe is necessary. Instead, it's about the flexibility and being able to be nimble enough that you can connect to the various identity spaces and various DSPs on behalf of clients in order to seamlessly move the transaction for a targeted audience from end to end. So the belief in the industry, and I actually believe this because this isn't, to me, a new concept. I think it's been there. It's just that it has a name now, is being nimble enough so that you can tie into various identity space to isolate and identify an audience and then activate advertising against them. And I think that what we've done at TiVo several years ago was we did just that by taking our household identities, which we anonymize through Xperi, and make it that this data set interoperable across the ecosystem by working with partners like BDEX so that we can also identify various or isolate and identify various touch points in that household so that we can bring digital advertising in front of the right people. So it's really interesting to see now that the marketplace is kind of putting context around this demand for a framework, even though we don't have a standard yet, like a single metric. They can't even agree that an impression is going to be the value against it. But I think what's really interesting is at least that we are starting to get more advanced in how we think about how we're going to move forward into bringing more dollars into the connected video space.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a whole set of challenges there because there's 150 different identity solutions out there. And then you have walled gardens as well that don't share anything. And so you have to try to figure out, okay, how do we, make all of that work together? I think that's sort of the challenge. Will the walled gardens participate? If they don't, does it become an antitrust issue because they're fighting competition? The whole idea about interoperability is to allow competition, right? Because competition fosters innovation, and so that allows the industry as a whole to advance. So I think that we're still kind of at a point where those things still need to be figured out. How are you going to tackle those challenges?
I think what's a huge step is something that the media agencies are even realizing that they need to build that framework internally in order to have interoperability where it's available. And, though we like to think of the, traditional linear model where you can just go and buy in bulk, across broadcasting cable through negotiations with various publishers, aka broadcasters. Here it's now, it's even more decentralized, where they're literally have to do it by client as well in this fragmented marketplace.
Right.
And so it's very daunting to think about, okay, how am I actually going to take, and especially if the advertiser wants to bring first party data into the picture, so they can truly leverage the benefits and strategic applications of digital, focusing on very specific customer targets, is that now they're building the piping that at least can connect them to these various touch points to be able to have that, that connection point, like an Xperi ID, a LiveRamp identity link, or if you're going to go through a safe haven and have a first party match happen safely. I think it requires investment. It's not cheap. It is a lengthy process. This doesn't happen overnight. It can take years. But it is, at least from what I've heard in the last, several weeks, is the leading holding companies are at least moving in that direction to bring that type of infrastructure. And in fact, one is operable at Horizon Media, who had the opportunity to share the stage to talk about their platform and how they're really focused on interoperability in order to attract new clients and also meet the diversified needs of their portfolio.
Yeah, it's probably very client driven in the sense that, it's, difficult to measure the success of a campaign if you have to, 3 or 4 different metrics against it, right?
Exactly.
Your linear CTV, programmatic, and now you have different metrics that you're measuring against all 3, and you don't know if you're reaching the same people or if you're reaching different people because, like you said, it's not fully interoperable. So I think that in order for them to satisfy their client base, especially their very large clients, when you're talking about the big media holding companies, they need this to be in place in order for them to be able to achieve that.
Well, and we talked a minute ago about the whole impact of return on ad spend and how that's become even more and more prominent over the last several years in the digital marketing ecosystem. And I read an article the other day. I think CTV spend is projected to increase by $11 billion by the end of 2025. You can keep me honest there, Fariba. But
I saw the same thing.
in the coming weeks and months and quarters, we're going to see that become even more prominent in that space, to be able to tie back the impact to return on ad spend. And that becomes a lot easier to do if, to your point, there's connections and piping, between the different channels and fragmented spaces that exist today.
Exactly. And I think it's just chipping away at it, right? And I think that this, especially since Horizon Media is privately owned and able to be more nimble themselves in getting that investment, they could be making advances that, the holding companies can take some time to catch up to, but it's going to change the dynamic, right? Because there's going to be clients that, migrate to Horizon and back and forth. So and then the demands change. So it's just this evolution, but at the core of it is still going to be, we need some type of framework or standardization, or at least some type of holistic approach in order to be able to define that return on spend so that you can justify the investment with that C-suite. Until, so CTV isn't there yet. There's a delta in terms of the proportion of the population that's streaming. I think it was somewhere over 55% of adults are actively streaming, but only, I think it's like 25% of the media dollars are being allocated to the connected TV. So there's room to catch up. And a lot of that is contingent on being able to get this, as one step forward being interoperability to get there. And obviously the longer term goal for the industry is some type of standardized measurement.
Jessie, you're on mute.
I was just going to say, this is going to be a good segment into CTV advertising. But before we did that, Fariba, you had a video where you were, I think you mentioned it just a second ago, they were talking about interoperability at Adweek. Do you want to share that video?
Yeah, I think this really kind of, this was from my speaking engagement on stage with Laura McElhenney, who's the Chief Data Officer at Horizon Media. And I think it's been really interesting for the audience here to kind of end this subject with her perspective on interoperability. So yeah, you can roll it. That'd be great.
Let me pull that up here on the screen. You can see it. Everybody see it?
Yep.
All right, we'll go ahead and play it.
I do not believe that there is such a thing as a universal ID. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that you have a lot of clients that may have their own identity. You have a lot of media partners that have their own identity, their own asset, their own content. And I think the word which you touched upon is interoperability. How do you operate? It's okay that you have your own identity, or you can rent an identity, right? There's plenty of identity signs out there that you can go out and rent and license and bring into your own platform or utilize. It's really about how are you connecting? How are you connecting with your partners? Are you connecting the right touch points? Are you making the IDs talk to each other? And that's what is the important part. It's the interoperability of, for Blue, we can operate across a RAMP ID, a UID 2.0, an Xperi ID, whoever the ID may be, a TU ID. There's a lot of identifiers that are out there. I think it's the interoperability, being able to do that and being more nimble to work in the marketplace. All within privacy, obviously.
So that's all very interesting. Let me pull my screen down there.
I think she did a really nice job of summarizing that. And I think really it's, at the end of the day, it's a function of being able to communicate with based on client's need. And it's really, encouraging to see movement and advancement at the agent level. And I think there's going to be some great things to come in 23 for sure, building upon that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think it's definitely an interesting topic, and looking forward to hearing more about that. But we could probably dive into CTV advertising at this point. I mean, we've already talked about it a little bit. There was an article we shared a little bit before, but just, a little bit from that to kind of get us started. It was, according to a new survey, CTV is the only platform that shows consistent notable growth in its percent of devoted ad budget. So nearly 3/4 of marketers and agencies say they increased CTV ad budgets from 2021 to 2022, and they plan to do it again in 2023. So they might as well be targeting deterministically. And, I think the best way for advertisers to improve their return on ad spend, which we've already been talking about a lot, is to work with partners like BDEX and TiVo. So let me kick that off to all of you. Adam, let's give you a chance to talk. What would you say to advertisers and I really to anyone about CTV advertising right now?
Put me on the spot first. I think it's exactly what you just said. It's find good partners that can help you in the identity space to be able to tie back to authenticated consumers, authenticated households. Really, putting a focus on eliminating fraudulent IDs, fraudulent traffic to help continue to drive that return on ad spend up. I mean, I think we've talked about it a lot here in this conversation. Return on ad spend is going to become even more prominent as we move forward, as we've seen happen just in the last year or two.
Yep. I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's prime on everybody's mind right now, right? Because of ad budgets just being cut. Of course, I would argue right now is not a good time to cut. If you can, you want to increase the budget as a good growth hack because everybody's cutting right now. But that's not always the case. So of course, improving that return on ad spend. What would you say, David?
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly what you said as far as increasing your ad spend on your budget, but doing it in a way that you're addressing the ad fraud issues that exist. And the issue has grown across different channels, but honestly, CTV advertising has become victim to this most recently. And it's, not easy to detect. And so that's where the challenge is. And you have to make sure that when you're working with a partner, you're working with one that has very clear, definitions of what they're doing to make sure that your ads are being seen by real people, and as opposed to bots and things like that.
And the whole thing is just so, it coming from, legacy linear to now this, it's just not even that was never part of a thought process, right? Fraud, when it came to, putting a commercial on the glass screen, there wasn't like a fake person that was going to be in the room, so this is really comes back to the very beginning of our conversation, is this evolution. It's grown so fast, accelerated because of COVID, that in-home entertainment experience and demand for content. And we as consumers are now, that, and this is what put pressure on that, fraud protection, is that there are going to be more and more ad-supported video on demand services and ways that brand messages can reach consumers through this new medium. So I think that it's a critical area to really ensure that we are not getting the wrong message in front of the wrong, on a glass screen, no less too. Or that, you're spending money on something that actually doesn't come to fruition as an advertiser. So this is new territory. It never was the case before when thinking about a glass screen. You're just hoping. In those days, you were hoping the right person was in the living room, but you had no idea they were there. If the eyeballs were technically, the screen is saying, oh yeah, the commercial aired in that room, but you don't know if the right person was there. And now here we are. We have to compound that with the fact that we have this fraudulent activity that is new to us.
Yeah, with linear TV, there was never a situation where if you put 1,000 TVs in your house, you could actually make a lot of money off of it, right? It didn't exist.
Right.
You just watch TV. Like, you couldn't even look at 1,000 TVs, but it wouldn't benefit you. But now it's very easy to use multiple mobile devices to create 1,000 different sessions that look like people are actually watching a programming. And instead they're bots, and those bots are clicking on videos and faking ad impressions and things like that. And so that's the challenge, is how detecting that, and looking to companies like, I'll plug BDEX, that have built technology to detect that, identify those IDs, and then literally put them in a blacklist, so that when we build audiences, when we're taking the TV viewership and the TiVo viewership data and we're building those audiences, we're able to actually make sure that those audiences are actually built against real streamers, people that are actually real people that are linked to actual CTV accounts. So that's the big difference. And if you're not clear on who your partners are and how they're doing that and how they're addressing the situation, if they're not being 100% transparent on how they're addressing the situation, then they're not. And that's the risk that you're taking. When you're advertising online today, you need to make sure that you have full transparency with the people that you're spending your money with.
Absolutely. And I put up that QR code there just a second ago, since you brought up what we do here at BDEX. Do you want to tell the listeners about what we launched this week, David?
Yeah, I mean, this week we launched a new Omni IQ product, which is our, Omni IQ is sort of the brand that we use to define a lot of things, whether it be our ability to build audiences, extend audiences using machine learning, or access our identity graph. But the newest product itself is more of a self-service and designed to help SMBs who, up till recently, really SMBs have been ignored in all of this. It's really difficult if you're a small media company or marketing agency and you're trying to represent your customers, in a way that can compete with those larger media companies or larger advertisers. And it's always been very difficult for them. And that's what we actually learned that here on our podcast. The more we talked to some of the smaller agencies, we found that they have found it very difficult to be able to find tools that allow them to do these exact things, build audiences against IDs that are known to be real people, and guaranteed to do that. And so our latest product enables those SMBs to basically go in, do everything from enhance existing data so they can take their first party data and upload it into the data clean room, do some data enhancements, get some analytics out of it, build audiences against it, and then activate those audiences as well. So we're really excited about it. It's something that we believe that is really designed to address an underserved market of SMBs in the industry that just really have been ignored up until recently.
Absolutely. Yep, it's been an exciting week. Fariba, have you seen any of our promotional items come out about Omni IQ?
I sure have. It's all great. And obviously, I know having chatted with you guys that this was on its way for the market formally. So congratulations on the launch. The promo's been great. And I think it's an incredible niche to fill because, this is an opportunity for anybody in the market. I think there's, this whole new digital ecosystem has really opened up a tremendous amount of creativity and competitive activity. And it's good for, everyone to have a chance to benefit from its success.
Absolutely.
Growth, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Adam, I know you and Warren have had a chance to talk to a few people who've used Omni IQ. Anything you'd like to share about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think David hit a lot of the high points coming as somebody that has a deep background in the media and marketing agency space. I can tell you that the SMB, the smaller agency that is a little bit more constricted from a budgetary standpoint. A lot of these tools and a lot of the functionality and a lot of this access has been something that they haven't really been able to tap into and lean into on behalf of their clients or on behalf of themselves for small and medium-sized businesses and brands directly. And so, we're seeing, folks are able to unlock more data and enrich, the first party data that they already have from their CRMs or from their first party data sets, as well as, being able to, enhance their audiences, build their audiences, extend their audiences, and trust that that's being done in a way that's going to really maximize the long-term impact and downstream impacts of the ad spend.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think we've almost hit our time. Is there anything else anybody else wants to add before I wrap things up?
No, this was great. It was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Always great to have you on the show, Fariba.
Same here. Thanks for having me. It's fun to have a chat about the stuff that we do every day in a different context. So this is wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on tonight or this afternoon. It feels like tonight because
it does
now
feel
pitch black.
Yeah. Thanks for teaching us about interoperability because I'd never heard of that until you explained it to me.
It's something that makes total sense, and it's something that we're all accustomed to and has been there. It's just now it has a name, and it'll be interesting to see how it adapts going forward into 23. But thanks so much for having me. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday and enjoy the time with family and friends.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You too.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and close it out. But for anybody, oops, sorry, Adam, tried to close it out and I clicked the wrong thing. But, if you're interested in the Deconstructing Data podcast, you probably will like Omni IQ. So you really should just try to upload your CSV file and see what you can learn. There's complimentary analytics available at the very least, and we would love to hear your feedback on it. We'd also love to hear from listeners about what you think of the Deconstructing Data podcast. So if you could just type up some qualitative data for us on that and email it to info@bdex.com with us. So please share your qualitative data with us. Everyone, please stay safe and thank you for being here. I'm going to close it out.